Alright, YouTube, this is Mr. Mean coming at you this fine Sunday afternoon. As always, like and subscribe. Let's grow the Meanie Army. Today's video du jour is super special for Mr. Mean. I have I almost said guy, because we were just talking about him. I have Mr. Andy Staples online with me, and we're going to do a little chat session, so I hope you enjoy it. And put your comments down in the chat below. We're going to talk about a bunch of crazy stuff and just fun things, and I hope everybody enjoys it. Mr. Andy, please introduce yourself.
Hi, so I'm Andy Staples. I'm a gamer of some 40 years standing. I cut my teeth on the blue cover edition of Dr. Holmes D&D. I've played Lord knows how many games since then. I'm one of the design team for the latest edition, the 5th edition of Chivalry and Sorcery, which has been a game that I have loved for well over 30 years. I would actually have to do some mental arithmetic to work out how long it's been. Something like 1983 or 4 I encountered Chivalry and Sorcery, so that's 26 or 27 years.
It's a long time.
36 or 37 years. My mental arithmetic is bad.
That's why we're gamers. We don't have to be smart. We just have to be verbose.
Yeah, roll some dice.
Yeah. Okay, sure, you made it. Yeah, it was 36 years. We'll go with that. So, I had the pleasure of meeting you for the first time thanks to our mutual friend Nasser Superbeast, or Nasser, from the Gulf role-playing community over there in Bahrain. Yeah, and he found my channel, and he just instantly just became a great person. He instantly backed me on Patreon, and he was like, dude, it's like talking to my best friend watching your videos. So a huge compliment to me. I'm not...
He's a great guy, isn't it? And he's like that in person as well.
That's... Everyone tells me that, and I'm like... He reached out to me and he said, hey, I've got these guys, they want to try Symbaroum, and I watched your video on it, and it was phenomenal. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoy your attitude. You don't take yourself too seriously. You're not a glory hound. You have fun with it, and so these guys would really like to try Symbaroum. Would you run it for us? And I'm like, sure, not knowing who you were. And I told this to Andy before we started recording. I didn't know who he was. I mean, I knew his name, but I didn't know who he was. And Andy's so gracious and humble that he was like, I'm nobody. I'm just doing this. But nerds are nerds, man. And we go squee when we see one of our heroes. And so you have to admit you are some people's heroes, and it's a good thing.
That makes me a little embarrassed. I mean, actually, nerds, we do two things really, really well. We have nerd love and we have nerd rage.
Right.
So I'm glad that we're on the love side of this.
Yes. No, we don't want the nerd rage. I don't think, no offense, but you wouldn't be on the channel if it was nerd rage. I am called Mr. Mean for a reason.
Nasser, I first hooked up with Nasser really when I was living in the Middle East. I've only just moved back.
And welcome back.
While the walls are all sparse behind me, it's really just been a few weeks I've been back in the UK. But I'd helped set up and maintain a gaming community in the UAE, the Gulf role-playing community, which is probably the best game group I have ever been involved with.
And that's high praise.
We did some really mental stuff for amateurs. There was one year it all started with the Middle East Film and Comic Con. Before that, I was a gamer. I'd met a couple of gamers. We met to game a couple of times a year. And then the first Middle East Film and Comic Con started. And I was working that weekend. So I couldn't get down to it. And a mate of mine, Mohammed, called me up and he said, hey, I've just met John Rhys Davies, and he's a really nice guy. And there's a guy down here running Shadowrun for 17 people.
Wow.
What, is he mad?
That's insane. That must have been Nasser.
Shadowrun for 17? And No, it wasn't Nasser.
Oh.
A guy called Omar Ismail.
Omar was in our Symbaroum game, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. He was in the Symbaroum game. He was playing the wizard.
Bartolome.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did a great job.
And Omar basically wasn't running a game to give people a good time or to demonstrate gaming. He was running a game to be visible so that other gamers would see it.
Right.
Because he had this plan of starting a community. So he just basically took names and emails, and a few weeks after that, about 10 of us met up in a coffee shop in Divine Mole, and we decided that henceforth we would be the golf role-playing community and that we would be its committee.
Self-appointed. I like it. Take charge.
Yeah, absolutely. After about it's been going 6 to 8 years now. I forget exactly, but it's above 1,000 members.
Wow.
And in the meantime, we've done some truly crazy things. We built a replica medieval tavern. 1 year for the Middle East Film and Comic Con.
Awesome.
We always ran there, apart from this year when there were some issues,
right?
Sort of COVID and what have you. But yeah, we built a medieval tavern.
That's
and of course we're in the Middle East, so we can't serve alcohol. So
right.
We found a friendly neighborhood cake baker, so we gave out cake.
That is awesome.
A pint of cake.
A pint of cake. That is awesome. Well, that would work for me because I don't drink, so I would be all down for that. Or maybe tea. I'm a tea and a coffee guy, so.
I'm tea and coffee, but I must admit I do like a real ale and a good scotch.
I used to, but yeah, I've gone many years without drinking, and I'm better for it, so I keep it that way. So. Let's dive into a little bit of your background. What was your relationship with chivalry and sorcery? How did you get into it? How did it start for you?
It was in some ways it was kind of an outgrowth of D&D. I was really captivated by the idea of role playing. I'd never come across a game like D&D before. It was a friend at school that introduced me. And we used to play these sort of schoolboy games in the back of maths classes or the back of religious education classes, where we'd draw mazes, and then you'd have to navigate around a maze. And they started out, a page torn out of an exercise book. And over the course of several months, I think somebody brought in one that was like an A3 size paper.
Wow.
And the passages were about, quarter of an inch wide, and we started adding traps and things to them. So if you come across the fire trap, you're dead. But if you find the fire extinguisher first,
you could put it out.
Then you can put the fire out, and then there were Daleks got added to it. You can see I'm a big Doctor Who fan.
Yeah.
So Daleks added to it, and then if you found a machine gun before you met the Dalek, you could use the machine gun to shoot the Dalek and get to the middle of the maze. And then we broke up for summer, and I didn't see my school friends all that summer. Came back, and in the summer holidays, they discovered this game called Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm like, well, what's that? It's like mazes, but better.
But better.
So they asked if I'd like to make a character and try a sample game, and I did. I made a cleric, and all I can really remember about him is that he couldn't afford a silver or a gold holy symbol after buying his armor. He had a wooden one, and he was called Cleric. He was Cleric the Cleric. And I went down into my friend John's dungeon, walked into a room with full of zombies wielding two-handed swords, and they won initiative and killed me.
You didn't even get to Cleric.
This is amazing.
This is right?
Do you want to play this? Do you want to play this every lifetime? Oh yes.
Yes.
But,
yeah.
But after a while, like you start running up against like the bits that don't make sense to you.
Right.
Why do we have more hit points now? And I know enough now that that's just the way the game mechanics work. I don't have those issues anymore. But back then it bothered me. It seemed particularly real. And the other thing is that I grew up in a village near a city called York, the old one, not the new one. And I'd started getting very into archaeology. There was a very, very famous Viking Age excavation going on in York at the time, the Coppergate, which is now the Jorvik Viking Centre. And so I used to go down. I used to watch the archaeologists at work, and they had a little finds shed in a porter cabin, a temporary office, and so you could see sort of the things they were pulling out, the coins, the bone skates, beautiful little tiny little panpipe type musical instrument, and it was because of the waterlogging on the site. So much organic material had remained. You could see the textiles, the fabrics that they'd used, and I wanted something more. I wanted, I got very interested in archaeology, and being a gamer as well, I loved the plans that archaeologists made.
Yeah.
Growing up in a medieval landscape, because most of rural England, our villages
fits that description.
Yeah, I mean, most of them sort of go back 1,000 years. The villages, most of our villages are mentioned in the Domesday Book, and my village was no exception. And I've subsequently discovered, because after university took night classes in landscape archaeology and what have you, so many of our field boundaries are actually medieval. So you're growing up in this kind of medieval landscape, and something always seemed a little bit wrong to me with D&D modules, like the village of Homler. This doesn't look like a village.
Yeah, it's not a village.
Nor does it really look like a town. And I started wondering, it's maybe it's a kind of like American frontier town.
A sprawl.
It's a medieval one. So I began sort of on this quest for sort of greater verisimilitude, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm growing up in a medieval environment, in a village with a 1,000-year-old church and what have you, I wanted a little bit more. And Chivalry and Sorcery was one of the first things that really
grabbed you,
got my attention.
Yeah.
As this can really really delivers on the atmosphere that I want. And I have to say, I mean, that there was sorry, I've just realised I haven't switched my notifications off my phone. So
it's okay. We're nothing but professional here on Mr. Mean. You'll see a kid run through in a minute.
There was an article about, of all things, medieval farming in one of the Chivalry and Sorcery books, like how many bushels of wheat you can grow and sort of how many people that can feed. And that's one of the reasons that I went back and studied archaeology after university. And I'm really, really grateful that I got a chance to meet Ed Symbolist, who had written that article, who was one of the original co-designers of Chivalry and Sorcery, and be able to tell him, I know where you got it wrong,
right.
But I'm amazed at how right you got it, given the information that was available in the late 70s.
Right.
And he was over the moon about it. His day job for decades was as a teacher. So the fact that he's inspired me to go out and actually do research and survey deserted medieval villages and what have you was
as a win.
He absolutely loved that.
Yeah.
Now I have to say that flavours the kind of things that I write in gaming and what interests me in gaming, but you do not need to know the differences of the 10 basic medieval village layouts,
right?
Or what peasants were doing in May,
right,
in order to play the kind of stuff that I like. All of that is background flavour,
right.
But I love that kind of depth that you get from understanding that there's really a working world beyond the dungeon, beyond the player characters.
And it's like the old saying that there's always a sliver of truth in every myth, right? Yeah. So our games are just myths, right? We're just telling stories, and they're all based on some form of truth, So
absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Sorry, carry
on. No, go.
No, I was going to say for me, sort of that having that depth of background adds depth to a campaign.
Yeah, it does. It really does. When you, I hate to say this, but and it's one of the things that you and Guy were talking about with Omar. on the interview though is GMs become, if you've done it for any length of time, whether it be 2 years, 10 years, 30 years, like we've done, you become subject matter experts in a roundabout way. Because if you're running a game, 99% of all these RPGs out there are based in some semblance of reality, right? Because we take it from what we know or what we love and we extrapolate it and we make a world out of it, right? So, Coriolis, very hard sci-fi, there's no light swords or anything like that, but there's weapons and, and there's faster than light travel, but yet they bring in an essence of like almost Cthulhu, which is total fiction, when you travel when you jump space, when you go in between the void, basically in the black space, there's a chance you can run into critters and things, and something may come back. So we have this almost very close to real world physiology of an environment. The way they describe their ships and how they set up habitats on planets and everything, and the space stations. It's logical. And then you have this fantastical, which is the creatures from beyond that could come in and intersect it. And then it's all based on almost a medieval European Arabic society. Their influences in like the food and the clothing and everything is very, very strongly influenced by the Arabic. And this is written by a Swedish game company. Yeah. So what? You're all over the place, but yet, it gets eaten up, and it allows people like you and I to tell these crazy stories that people just, chomp at the bit to get. And I think that's what makes it so much fun.
And I think good games masters sort of tend to be collectors of trivia as well. Yeah. I mean, I don't have my library with me at the moment, most of it, but when I've got my full library up, I've got books on human and physical geography, on right. meteorology, on linguistics, yep. Anything that helps me build a world, right. A believable world. I study, I read a lot of creative writing books for coming up with characters and character motivations and traits. And I think as a games master, my weakness is probably plots. So I've got a few tricks that I use for that. One of which is using tarot cards.
Yeah.
To just do a layout. I'm not a believer in the mystic power of tarot cards.
Oh, what? This interview's over. I can't talk to you no more.
Now, if other people are, then fine.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not.
Yeah.
But what tarot cards do is they help you tell a story. There's
right.
a series of pictures that you lay down, each of which has a meaning. And how do I relate that? And I find that a good way to break out of a plot inspiration. But lately, I think I've progressed a little bit beyond that, and I don't worry about plots anymore.
Right.
I create characters with motivations, and I put them into a situation with player characters, and I see how the players bounce off them, and from that emerges a story.
Right. I akin it to I coined the phrase reactionary GM. And I fall very strongly into that category. And because years ago, I was the guy, the kid that, I had the crazy imagination. I was always doodling and drawing in class. I got straight A's. I was a very good student, but my mind was elsewhere. And so my friends would always come to me with, whatever the cool board game was or whatever, and be like, here, run the, let's do this. And then of course I was a problem child, being the son of a police officer. We're the worst kids. And I was in a lot of trouble as a wee lad. Yes, sir. And so my mom recognized that I needed some sort of creative outlet. And so she just happened to be walking through the drugstore and saw a Ziploc bag for $10, which in the early 70s, that's a chunk of change. and it was the D&D white little books.
Wow.
And, with chits. There were no dice. Yeah, there were no dice. It was chits. It was a piece of card with 1 through 0, 1, 2, 3, going all the way to 0 and multiples, and you would cut it out. And my mom sat down with me and helped me cut it out, and we put it in, and we read the rules. And I'm proud to say my mom taught me how to play D&D. And then I went and taught my friends, and then it was over from there, And so every Friday night, it was a couple of friends over at the house playing D&D, and it was literally no plot. It was, we kick in the door, we kill the orcs, what do I get? And then I had the random charts, but yeah, like you and Guy, I started out with, books, and I still have some of those books floating around, just, tomes of, the merchant on 3rd Street wears, a black tuxedo with a pocket watch. His name is Sven, and he has coiffed locks of hair, and he wears a ruby earring, and is, just this insane. And they never talk to that guy. Yeah, and they never talk to that guy, and I would be so mad. And it would, and I would sit there and go, "Am I a bad GM because they don't?" And so now I kind of go the Guy route where I like I said, I call it the reactionary GM. I read Dungeon World, and it was like an epiphany because it was the way I GM. Let the players come. The players are their own worst enemies.
I had the same reaction to Dungeon World.
Yeah.
In fact, the very, very first time I ran Dungeon World, it was a mini convention for the Gulf role-playing community. In those days, there were no game shops,
right.
Particularly in Dubai. There was one, but it was Warhammer.
Shocker.
To run, yeah. And so Dubai doesn't have very many sort of small venues, or it didn't in those days. So we were basically having to rent out conference facilities in
right.
hotels. And we were running this particular one at the 19th hole at the Abu Dhabi Golf Club. And I mean, I sort of walked into this, and there's like a clear perspex grand piano in the corner, and sort of all the tables have perfect linen on them, and we had waiter service, and I'm just like, I mustn't get used to this.
Because when you go back to the UK, or you come to England, they're gonna be like, dude, go get your own water. There's a bucket over there. You're gonna be like, what? That's awesome, though.
So I was driving down to this, and I said that I'd run 2 games that day, and I would run Dungeon World because I'd had it about a month. I was itching to give this a try. And we had a guy in the group who was an ex-cop and a Judge Dredd fanatic. So I mentioned, I've just got the new Judge Dredd
RPG.
Traveller. And so, please run that. So I ran it, and I actually spent all of my prep time for that con painting Judge Dredd miniatures, and coming up with a concept, because we got into this stage where all the GMs, all the experienced GMs, were trying to one-up each other
right.
on their presentation, and people were coming with 3D dungeons to move miniatures around and what have you, and I sort of fell for this rather than being courageous and saying, no, I shall run it narrative style.
That's right. Theater of the mind.
Yeah. So I'd spent all my time prepping Judge Dredd minis and painting them, and thinking about what I do in the Judge Dredd game. And I'm driving down thinking, I have no idea.
Yeah, you put so much effort into everything else except the story or the adventure, and then you realize, right. Oh crap! I've got to run a game in 3 hours.
So I thought about it driving down through the desert, and I thought about a castle that in Derbyshire. It's called Peveril Castle, or in medieval times, the Castle of the High Peak. And there's a cavern under there, which in the 12th century, there's a description of somebody following a lost sheep down into it and coming into another world, the realm of fairy, with red-eared cattle, churches and villages and what And this cavern is now called Peak Cavern. It's been called that ever since Queen Victoria visited it in the 19th century. Its former name was the Devil's Arse, and they changed it to Peak Cavern because they thought it wouldn't be good to have Queen Victoria
going in the devil's ass. Yes, yeah, I could see that.
So I thought about that, and I got to the con and I scribbled 3 names down on the back of an envelope, and then went straight into running Dungeon World. And it was a fantastic session. I had way too many players. Everybody had heard about Dungeon World and wanted to try it. So
yeah.
I had as many players as I had character sheets, and I printed out all of the character sheets in the book and all of the character sheets, extra ones that you can get on their website.
Right.
And so I had 11 players. And the beautiful thing about Dungeon World is the character generation is so simple.
Yeah. Read.
Yeah, and all of the characters have some
hook
connection they forge with another character.
Your bonds.
So I essentially just presented this really, really simple basic plot with like a mini dungeon, the 4-room dungeon, and just let them at it. And I was blown away by how well that works, because Dungeon World is designed for exactly that kind of thing.
It is.
I'm correct. I might have overthought it.
Yeah, and I just ran a intro. I'm lucky enough that my boss at work is never gamed. And he's a mathematical guy. He's really sharp young man. He's in his mid-30s. Just finished up his master's degree. He's just one of those guys that he programs, and he's a smart guy. And I'm fortunate enough to call him my boss and my friend. And I remember we were walking. I think we were walking either to lunch or from lunch, and it was shortly after I started working for him. And he had heard that I was a GM from one of my other coworkers who was also a gamer. And I'm very proud of my hobby. I'm very proud of my channel. I've been doing the channel for 3 years now. I've got almost 300 videos up. So, it's not too bad. 100 a year, I'll take it. And so when people ask me about it, I'm not shy. I'm not, timid about my hobby. This is my passion. And so I started explaining to him, and he started asking, more questions. And when somebody's interested, they always ask those leading questions, well, what would you do in this situation? And, and I said, I could spend 3 hours describing, Dungeons and Dragons or role playing to you, or you could just come to my house on Friday night and try it. And he did. And the proverbial kid in a candy store with 100 pounds to spend and told to go nuts is what I had after that night. And he's still, to this day, it's been a little bit over a year now, he's still in my game. We play every Friday night as long as weather permits, or just COVID. Obviously, we took a couple months off, but he is like a kid in a candy store. Every Friday night, he's just giddy, and that's where the enjoyment comes in for me. But the point of it is I ran Dungeon World for him 2 weeks ago, and he's new to gaming. He's only ever played Pathfinder and Mutant Chronicles by Modiphius, because Mutant Chronicles is my all-time favorite RPG. I have all 3 editions. And so obviously if I get a say, I'm going to run it anytime I can. And I can run it with my eyes closed. It's one of those games that's near and dear to me. And he loves Mutant Chronicles. So then I throw this Dungeon World, which is, 180 degrees from these other rules-heavy games that he's been playing. And here's one that, well, can I do this? Sure. What do I roll? 2d6. If you get a 7, 8, or 9, you succeeded, but I get to do something. If you roll a 10 or better, you totally get whatever you want. Really? That's all I got to do? Well, be descriptive. Tell me how you do it. Oh, okay. And kid in a candy store, man. And we played for... I had an adventure set up. They were going to go down this path, but then the one player started spouting lore about the forest and how there was this bear spirit that had been tainted and was in pain and was attacking everybody. And so we started to go this way, and then all of a sudden, and they had, and this thing, we almost got a TPK. It almost killed them, and it was totally random, made up right there on the spot. And that is what I love about Dungeon World, because players are their own worst enemy. Because I asked them, well, what are the stories that spout lore about this beast? Is it super deadly? Is it just an annoyance? Oh no, it's the spirit of the forest, and it's very bad, and it's hurting people, and we need brave heroes to go in. And I think we're those brave. Oh, you are those. You go in there, you get that. And I mean, they almost got foobarred, but they loved it, and they ate it up. So, and like my coworker he was ecstatic with it. He loved it.
So what I really love about that kind of thing is when you get the players giving you stuff you can bounce off. When you were talking about being a reactive games master, and I love it when players give you stuff that you can bounce off.
Yeah.
And what I find really hard these days, it's almost having gone, well, I won't say full circle, but it's halfway around the circle. So back in the old days, we used to, as you said, we used to plan everything. You knew the NPC's inside leg measurement. Or if you didn't know it, you'd written it down somewhere, and just give me 10 minutes while I hunt through my notes. But nowadays, when you're bouncing off people, it gets really hard to do that old sort of 80s, even 90s style of games mastering, where you are expected to be the entertainer.
Yeah.
Where you're expected to have all these things at your fingertips and have thought through everything in advance. And I've noticed it a couple of times when you get a couple of very active players in a group and the others are less active.
Yeah.
If those two players are ever absent, you just have a flat session.
Yeah.
Because you're not getting anything you can bounce off.
And I will say, to me, a good games master will mold his players as much as the players mold him, because we want to tell a story that you want to play. And that's the logic I take going towards my players. Is all my players are required, and my Pathfinder, I'm running a Pathfinder 2nd edition campaign, homespun. I'm not running anything out of a book. It's all out of here, and there's a lot of room up here because there's not much up there. But they are all required to give me a character background. And I'm on the same page as Guy because he said something that really hit me is, you all know each other. You've all adventured together a little bit. Maybe one or two of you might be new to the group, and then there's the one player that wants to play the rogue, that wants to steal everything from everybody. Well, then why are you here? You're just here to disrupt. That's not going to float. And so I think a good game master has to find a way to weave everybody in, but also has to set the expectation for the players. This is the kind of game I'm going to run. I want you to help me tell an amazing story. And in order for that to happen, you have to participate. Because there are a lot of gamers out there that will just and wait for you to tell them what they do. And my good friend Brian once told me two things that just stuck with me as bore me and die. Right? We were playing Legends of the Five Rings, and Brian is a fantastic GM, and he said, "Bore me and die." And then I was running a werewolf campaign that he was playing in, and Brian is a consummate GM. He's not a very good player because he's an attention hog like me, and over the years he's toned it down, and he is a good player. I don't want to make it sound negative, but he's a GM like me. I'm a GM. I don't prefer to play. I prefer to GM. And I was picking on, one of my NPCs was picking on him, and he said, "The barking of the dogs does not affect the clouds." And I went, wow, that's profound. That is amazing. And so bore me and die, and that is, so I try to make all of my adventures, like when we did the Simba Room, you guys were right in it. We opened up the floodgates, and the proverbial shit hit the fan right then and there. And
that was such a fun game. I've got to admit, doing a 1 hour session is
I never talked so fast in my life.
with Pathfinder Society, because I started running Pathfinder Society games to get people into gaming.
Right.
When we were setting up the golf role-playing community, always that issue where you don't have enough games masters.
Yeah.
So organised play is great for that kind of thing. You don't have to commit to a long campaign. You come in. So we're doing a lot of demo campaigns, and they have this system called quests, which are basically one scene adventures that last an hour. But 6 of them build up into a full scenario. So at a con, it's great because you can have somebody come in and spend an hour.
Yeah, and you just give them a character sheet.
And then they can go off and look at the Marvel cosplay, or go and meet William Shatner, or whatever else they're going to do at the con. Or if they want to stay, if the gaming is what they're there for, they can stay for the 6 hours. And we used to tag team games masters as well for that.
Oh, yeah.
So,
you have to. 6 hours?
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to talk above all the noise of a convention, you know. Yeah. And even with tag teaming, after 3 days, I've been talking like this.
And then the inevitable con crud that comes afterwards, where you get, you get sick for 3 days.
And nowadays we're doing virtual cons, and I'm still getting con crud.
How did you get infected through the interwebs?
Yeah, I got no idea. It's a virus.
A computer virus got me sick.
Yeah, absolutely. But we've just done for the golf. Even though I'm back in the UK, so still involved with the golf role playing community. So we've just done our Halloween con.
I know. I was part of it.
Yeah. Oh yes, of course you were. Yeah.
I ran Simba Room. I wanted to play I wanted to be in your game, but the time didn't allow.
I wasn't running because I'm honestly, I've been 2 weeks in a house. I've still got stuff in boxes, and I still haven't built stuff. So I was, my arm was twisted to actually host a panel. And I only got broadband internet on Friday, the day before I'm supposed to host.
Sweating. Yeah, I wanted to go to that panel because I really wanted to ask you like really embarrassing questions, but I couldn't get the time off.
Well, I was hosting, so I mean it was a great panel. I mean, we had Mike Mason. It was on horror gaming, so we had Mike Mason, co-designer of Chivalry. What am I saying? Of Call of Cthulhu,
right?
7th edition. And the Call of Cthulhu designers set. We had Seth Sokowski, who's a horror novelist and a horror gaming YouTuber, and we had Pettinello, who has done Cult Divinity Lost, using Cult, the 90s schlock horror game, using the Apocalypse World engine.
Oh, that would have been neat.
That should be right up your street, and they've actually got that on Bundle of Holding at the moment. If you want to check out the PDFs,
I will.
So, we had this really, really solid horror panel, and I've always felt like I'm not a very good horror games master.
Same.
I'm always a little bit intimidated by it. I'm always like, how do you get that little frizz on the face? So it was great for me to sit there and basically just get tips from some of the best horror games masters and designers around. So yeah, I mean, I think it's been uploaded to YouTube now. That panel. So
I'll definitely go check it out.
Even better one the day before that I wasn't involved with 4 women in the Middle East.
Yes, I was watching that right before I called you.
It's absolutely superb. I'm just blown away by it. It's so positive, and the energy and the humour and the rapport that the women were sharing is just an absolute delight. It's one of the best videos I've seen.
It is one of that's what I truly love about this hobby is the camaraderie. I've had transvestites in my game, full-blown transgender, and they were the nicest people. And you get to the point. We're open-minded as gamers because we're talking about demons, we're talking about knights and swords and lightsabers and all this crazy shit, right? So we have a certain level of open-mindedness that a lot of people that are not gamers don't have. And so we're a very open community. And I think my big thing is at the end of the day, if I stand up from the table after a game session and I can say, wow, I had fun, then it's a great day. And even if I set up and go, nah, I had fun, but like Call of Cthulhu, I'm just not a big fan of Call of Cthulhu. I own, I think, 4th edition, the green leather cover one they put out a couple of years ago. And it's a beautiful book. It's the parchment paper, and, it smells like that old musty tome, and I love it. I love the system. Mithras uses a very similar system, that D100 system. So I love that system because it's very realistic. You get into a combat with that system and you get stabbed. You're not running a marathon tomorrow. There's no magical healing, or it's few and far between. So I like that gritty realism, but I like the fact that gamers, the guys like you, me, Nasser, Omar, Mohammed, Miguel Warlock, who's one of my subscribers on my channel, is, he's from Spain, but in that channel, wherever it may be, we're just gamers. We're not Christians. We're not lesbians. We're not gay. We're not, racist. We're gamers. That's all we are. You don't say, hey, I spoke to Andy Staples, that white guy, right? You say, no, I spoke to Andy, the guy behind Chivalry and Sorcery. Ooh, or the guy that played Fenya, in the Symbaroum game.
One of the things that I really love, gaming is my passion, it's my hobby. It's given me immense pleasure over 40 years, and hopefully will do so for a few decades to come. And I eat, breathe, think gaming.
Yep.
I'm watching a movie, I'm wondering how I might play that in a game. I read a book, I'm wondering, what can I pull out of this? I go to sleep thinking about, ooh, that could be an interesting character, or so one of my top tips for any games master is keep an ideas book.
Yes.
Yes. You forget this shit.
You do. It is so funny. And with technology nowadays, it's if you got one of these, there's your notebook. You don't even have to. And I have a really nice iPad Pro, and same thing. And I got the iPencil, and I keep it next to me when I was watching Mandalorian last night, the new episode, and I'm like, ooh, a sand dragon. So.
Don't give me too much, because I still only watched the first couple of episodes of season 1.
Oh, you got to get on it, man.
We couldn't get it very easily.
Right.
In the Middle East, so,
it's a little harder. But now you're back, and you'll love it. You'll love it. James Favreau, or Jon Favreau, is amazing.
What I do is I keep Evernote on all my devices, so I can make a note on my phone, on my desktop, on my laptop.
Right, and it follows you.
Everything, which is great. But the point I was going to make about that, the ideas book, was a digression. The point I want to make is I want to give something back to gaming, and it's part of the reason that we started the Gulf role-playing community, was to sort of spread the word and spread the pleasure, to make sure that people who wanted to could get a chance to game. And then when a lot of the streaming services started, the Matt Mercer stuff and what have you, and 5th edition came out, suddenly people were like, we want to try this. So I've like been volunteered by friends or by my wife when somebody mentioned on a Facebook group, can somebody run a game for my kid? I will, if I can bring my kid along and they can game together. So I've run for kids, I've run for students who are like, we've got this game called Pathfinder, can anybody show us how to run it? Come on over to my place. We'll run your game. And I'm only going to do one session for you, but after this, you can go off and do it on your own. Because way back when, I didn't discover gaming on my own. I was invited to a game. Your case is a little bit different. Your mum taught you. But for me, I've always felt that it's better to be shown how to do it. It's a little bit like Mr. Miyagi and Daniel said, isn't it? You learn gaming from
It's so true though. And those stories, right? Yeah, I mean, you've got, 40 years of this history. Granted it's all made up, but it really happened. Right? It really happened at a table with your friends, chucking some dice, telling a good story, and those are memories that you'll take to your grave. And it's always the common thing that it.
Then they will be lost, for there is no true beauty without loss.
It's true. This is
okay, that's enough.
Yeah, but there's I have a fond saying that I like to say, because like I said, I've been doing this as long as you have. The games are great, but without us, without games masters, I don't care how good your game is, you can have the most amazing product in the world, but it can't jump off the shelf and run itself. You need creative people, like us, like Guy, like Omar, that are willing to give a portion of themselves, to bring this world alive. And then the players are the most important part, because if I'm just running a game without players, that's called insanity. But if I'm running it right, and then you're going to put me in a jacket where I'm hugging myself and I'm in a rubber room. But if you put 3 or 4 people in front of me, now I'm a storyteller. And that to me is the greatest compliment. When I run convention games and people, the greatest feeling I have, and I'm sure you've had this too, is you're walking through the convention the next day or the day after, and you see that young lady or that young man that was in your game, and they're walking out of the dealer room with the game that you ran, and there's a smile, and they're, and they're so excited. I feel like I did my job. There's such a sense of accomplishment. And, in all fairness, just to be a fanboy, running that 1-hour session for you guys, I was that kid walking out of the dealer's room with that book on, because you guys had so much fun and just rolled with it. And we moved so fast. I mean, we did it in 58 minutes. The actual gaming time was 58 minutes, and we got through a story basically, and it was, I'm telling you, it was the highlight of my month. It was so much fun. And then that's when I realized this Nasser guy is a maniac, because he's, he's just, you got to do this. And then he's like, he emailed me, and he's like, Andy had so much fun, and Muhammad had so much fun, and I'm like, well, dude, that's great. Send them to my YouTube channel, And then you popped in, you're like, hey, and I'm like, I didn't recognize it. I'm like, who the hell is this guy yelling at me? So, but there's something about, in your case, writing. I do have writing credentials. I did some stuff for Eden Studios years ago for the Armageddon series. I wrote an intro adventure. And so I do have some writing. And then I just did a Kickstarter with my friend James Gantry over at Feral Games Inc., who's also another Brit. And he's got his Delve RPG that is kicking off. And I'm writing the intro adventure to that, which I'm very... So I may be hitting you up for some advice.
Nice. Well,
hint, hint, hint.
If you need it, I mean, I'm not just an RPG writer, but I've mentioned too early that I was a cub reporter. So I've made my living out of the written word.
So I'm so...
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally looking forward to it. I'm so excited.
But there's so many games out at the moment. It's truly a great time to be a gamer.
Oh, the as the saying goes, the sea is full of fish, and I've got lots of bait.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. So we were supposed to be doing an interview and not bullshit. So let's ask a question.
Okay, go on, ask me something.
I'm thoroughly enjoying myself, sir. So thank you. What if there was one RPG, past or present, that you're not involved in that you wish you would have been, either to create or have a hand in developing? What would it be?
Okay, so first of all, I have to explain that if you ask me for my top 3, I'll give you 10.
Right. Well, same. I mean, again, I can't make a decision.
Yeah. I'll give you 2 games that I haven't been involved with to any great design degree. I was a playtester for one of them. I love RuneQuest. I think you were saying you don't like Call of Cthulhu particularly, but that percentile mechanic
it's great.
Of basic role-playing, which powers RuneQuest, it started with RuneQuest,
right?
Call of Cthulhu, I think is a thing of beauty because it's really, really intuitive.
Yes.
You can look at a character sheet for a basic role-playing system and know exactly what you can do.
Yep.
You don't really need to know rules.
No.
You know, if you've got a climb chance of 60%, you know you've got a 60% chance of being able to climb the thing.
Right. Yeah, and I love that. I Elric, Elric, another same system.
Oh yeah, Stormbringer, Elric.
Fantastic.
Fantastic game. I've got the first edition, the one with Ken St. Andre was involved.
Yep.
With all the demon armor and what have you. Beautiful. Worked the system beautifully.
Yeah.
And the other one is a game by Chris Klug. I hold it up frequently as an absolute masterclass of game design. James Bond 007.
Yes. I didn't know the name, but I know the game, obviously.
Yeah. Now, believe it or not, there's something of an anecdote about those 2 games because I was lucky enough to be involved in the RuneQuest, the new edition of RuneQuest playtesting with Chris Klug, the designer of James Bond 007, as my games master. And that was just, I learned so much about game design and games mastering from just a few sessions with Chris running us online.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning earlier about player engagement, and Chris did something that he teaches game design, by the way, at a university somewhere in the Midwest. I forget which one, but it was something that I think Robin Laws had said to him about getting players involved. So we were playing this clan of nomadic horsemen in Glorantha, and we designed our characters. And then the next session started, and Chris said to us, "Okay, so what's your clan name?" And we all looked a little bit blank, and nobody was really wanting to speak up.
Right.
On the spot. He said, "Okay, yeah." He said, "I thought that might be a bit of a nasty question to ask you. So, I came up with 4 possible names, and you don't have to go with these, but maybe one of these." And I forget what 3 of the names were, but the last one he mentioned was the 4 Gifts Clan. And I just straight up said that, well, the 4 Gifts Clan sounds like a name with a story behind it. The other players agreed. And Chris said, "Yeah." He said, I was hoping you thought that might be an interesting name." He said, "So what are your 4 gifts of your clan?" So we came up with 3 things that fitted with Gloranthan mythology, and after that our inspiration was beginning to flag a bit. And he said, "What's the 4th gift?" I said, "Well, the 4th gift is a secret known only to the tribal chief. The secret of it is passed down from chief to chief."
Nice.
And Chris was like, "Oh, I can work with that." And I thought that idea of just even in a limited way, getting players to design part of your world, of part of their immediate surroundings, is a really, really great way of getting player engagement.
Player engagement, yeah.
That was a digression from one question, so you might have another. So, how long have we got? 4 hours?
We can go until my kid wakes up from his nap, because then my wife will need help. But sir, I am not shy. I am not unbiased to say that I am absolutely enjoying the time. So we will go as long as you want to go. I'm totally happy with it. I enjoy this immensely because I very rarely get to speak to someone who has as much time in the hobby as I do. It's
great fun, isn't it?
It is. I mean, to see my oldest boy is 21. and he's off at, as you would say, university. And he did not take to it. He would come with me. We were in Arizona, and we would go to Tucson, Arizona. There was a gaming club there, and we would go, and he just wanted to take whatever the biggest, baddest monster character was and kill things. And then the rest of the time he'd have his nose buried into his iPad or whatever. So he really never took an interest in it.
But I mean, that's fine as well.
Oh, sure, yeah.
As role players and world builders, we do tend to look down a bit on
right,
slash,
and
we really shouldn't,
right,
because you can enjoy the game very, very many ways.
Right, and he was just doing it to play with his dad. Right, he was like 9 or 10 years old. He really didn't care. And to this day, he's like, "Dad, you still do gaming?" And I said, "Yeah, you still play video games." He's like, "Well, yeah." I'm like, "Well, I mean, that's your hobby. This is my hobby." That's one of the big things. We'll digress for a second. For people that are listening, there is no wrong or right way to do tabletop gaming, as long as it doesn't offend or hurt anybody. If you guys are a group, guys and gals are a group that want to just go and kick in the door, kill the monsters, and see what loot you get, if you're having fun, then that's the right way to do it, right? If you're telling this complex story and you've got 6 generations of characters and their lineage, and everybody's down with it, and you know the butler of the nanny, and you're having fun with that, then it's working. You're doing it right. There is no wrong way to play, as long as you're not offending and or hurting anybody. And that's one of the great things of this hobby, is it is literally open to interpretation on so many levels. It's not even funny. So, with that being said, my next question: out of all of the, and there's tons of what we call gaming luminaries, and outside of our circle, they're just first and foremost, I don't subscribe to the fanboy theory. Most of the people on my channel know I was a police officer for 10 years, a federal agent with U.S. Customs. So I've met Sean Connery. I've met 3 of our presidents. I have met a lot of famous and important people.
I was a journalist. I interviewed Douglas Adams.
Wow. See, yeah.
I interviewed Richard O'Brien at Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah.
When you're at a con and people are, I'm queuing, I want a photo with so and so. I'm like, yeah, okay, have fun.
Yeah. John Wick was my roommate. Okay, look, I don't care. But the one thing I like is that we're grounded, but in our little circle, who's the one, and it can be a developer, a designer, a player, who's the one person you would love to just sit down with for like an hour and have a spot of tea and talk about game design?
Well, it won't happen because he died a couple of years ago. Greg Stafford.
Yes. Yeah.
Without a doubt. I mean, one of the most creative
and super nice guy.
I never got to meet him.
I did get to meet him because he was based out of California for a while, and he was a little out there.
Yeah.
But in a good way, and he was a super nice guy, and I remember just shaking his hand, and I felt like a puppy, just hanging on every little word he said. And he never said anything profound. He never said it like, "Oh, it all makes sense now. The universe is my oyster." But he was just a guy, and Ken St. Andre was based in Northern California as well, and I've hung out with him a couple of times.
He seems like a really nice guy. I mean, I follow him on Facebook. He's just had quite a nasty car accident.
Yes. Yeah. And then the horror writer, Robert Hite.
I don't know.
Robert is. I had the fortune of my good friend Brian used to do a podcast called 2D6 in a Random Direction, and he would take Robert out to. Right? Yeah. I wish he would bring it back, Brian. That's a hint. Brian's a really good friend of mine. Dare I say he's my younger brother. I mean, we are not related, but we should be because he is. I love him.
From another mother.
I love him dearly. Yeah.
I've got a couple of them.
Oh yeah, he is definitely on that list. He is the closest. I have no living family except for my cousin. So Brian is up there for me. He's very close, and he was running that podcast, and he would have Height on all the time, and what a mind that thinks like that, and I always put it akin to, if he went this way, he'd be a serial killer. Good thing he went this way. Yeah, because, I mean, his mind is so diabolical when you read his Cthulhu stuff and his horror stuff, and you're just like, how does someone think of this? And so that Robert Height would be mine. I would want to sit down with him and just pick his brain, for hours, and just, game design and game theory and how do you come to these, what makes you think that, and he's...
The thing with that is that I think yours might be a little bit like me with Greg Stafford. It's like you're hoping a little bit of that will rub
right.
Yeah. You'll kind of walk away with the great insight
right.
into how to do this.
Yeah, the universe will open, and there will be a giant cosmic pearl, and it will be all mine.
There'll be rainbows across the sky. And...
little cherubs floating down, yeah. So
and
what?
The words you have leveled up.
Right. Ding! That would be awesome. So the next question, you are in an airplane, it's going down, and you can only grab your satchel. What one RPG is in that satchel?
Okay, I have actually had to make that decision.
Ooh.
Just a month ago, because I left my home of 15 years and had to bring a limited number of things. So it's not one RPG.
Oh, it has to be. Has to be one. Has to be one. You only got room for one. It has to be one. Yes. All right. Excellent.
Chivalry and Sorcery, the second edition.
Yes.
And that's also because I know that I have about 120 gigs of gaming PDFs through and other sources on my hard drives. I know that I have my edition, the 5th edition, in PDF form. So there's that one. But while we're on it, shall I show you the other stuff that came with me?
Sure. Please.
I brought. Now, here's the thing. So I design sort of on the complex end of gaming.
Yes.
I like the heavy rules details. So a thing that absolutely had to come with me is my old copies of the Fantasy Trip.
Yeah.
Which is one of the simplest systems out there. So this is the original with the sorry, it's all in a bag. I'm just holding a plastic bag with the original count.
Wow, excellent.
So, and I love this because this is just like index cards that I use as character sheets for Chivalry and for Fantasy Trip.
Yeah.
Design
but that's all you need.
Love it.
Yes.
And I have these are rarities actually. These came with me because I normally keep them in my Chivalry and Sorcery 2nd edition book. This is two little games that were made by Wolf Backhouse, one of the with Ed Simbliss, one of the co-designers of the 1st and 2nd editions of Chivalry and Sorcery. He was going to do this as a kind of modular game. There's the combat system there with the kind of cover that really wouldn't pass muster these days, and the magic system, which is very similar to Chivalry and Sorcery in a lot of ways. And he was going to do this as a modular game in the early 80s.
Right.
He just got these 2 volumes published, and the warehouse where he was keeping all his stock burnt down. And so he lost heart and never went on to complete the system. But it's a delightful little system. What else do I have here? Oh, the supplement. More of the basic fantasy.
Oh yeah, you got to have that. Yeah, you could do anything with that.
Yeah,
I mean
it's basic D&D with modern mechanics.
Yes.
Not to love.
Yeah. And
I've got the recent version of the Fantasy Trip.
Nice.
I didn't bring the full box with everything in it.
I almost backed that, but I have the original, so I was like, nah, do I really need it? No. And obviously I have so much stuff, and
I just wanted to show willing and show support at the time, but I have to say that the new version is done really, really nicely.
Yeah.
I might be up to my limit of how many Kickstarters and sets there are.
Well, that brings me to my next subject, and we can have what I like to call, this will be the bitch session of the interview. I'm kind of against Kickstarters, and let me tell you why. Ulysses Spiel, love them, right? They make The Dark Eye. They just did Fading Suns. Okay, now I'm drawing blanks now that I have to come up with names. Monty Cook,
Always the way.
right?
Never start a list.
Right? Numenera, that whole series. I'm opposed. I think Kickstarters should be reserved for the little guys. Guys that don't have the 10, 20 grand to put a book to print. Companies like Ulysses Spiel. I love The Dark Eye. It is one of my favorite settings. It's the German version of D&D, basically. It's super old. It's got a living world that the fans help create whenever they do a new iteration. And I have backed every Kickstarter, so I'm a hypocrite in my own word. But I live in an area where it's not easy for me to get those books. So I don't have a local game store that has like all the latest and greatest on the shelf. So sometimes Kickstarter is my only option if I don't want to wait or I want to make sure I get it. But I have a real beef with these huge companies. Pinnacle Entertainment, great company. I know a lot of the people that work for the company. I'm friends with them. I love Savage Worlds. It's one of my all-time favorite games. But I don't think those types of companies need to go to Kickstarter. They're using it, in my opinion, this is strictly my opinion, they are using it as a pre-order system, and I think it's unfair to the small-time publishers, the guys like, Feral Games Inc., and, the little bitty guys out there that are trying to do stuff.
Like ourselves. I mean, we
right.
got the fifth edition of Chivalry and Sorcery without...
yeah, you would have never made it. Yeah.
I mean, we would. I mean, the actual system has been in place for years.
Yeah.
And then, of course, once we did the Kickstarter, we then go back through the L files and go, wait, we want to change this thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from, but the doing something that's more than a pre-order as well. A Kickstarter is publicity.
Right. Right, and it's free.
A marketing tool as well.
Yeah.
Now, I get where you're coming from. I don't think I entirely support it. I do sometimes when I'm feeling a little dark, go, yeah, it should be for the little guys. But what you have to realise about gaming is all these great renowned companies are not necessarily big guys.
Right.
Chaosium, for instance.
They've struggled for years financially.
Well, they did, and New Chaosium is a handful of people.
Right.
If you can get to the stage where you're actually paying, as a games company, where you're actually paying anybody, that's a big.
You've arrived.
If you can support, 3 or 4 people to do this full time, then you are up among the likes of Chaosium.
Right.
Who I think, I mean, I'm not privy to their employee
statistics
list or what have you, but they aren't very much more than 4 or 5 people working for them full time.
Right.
We operate in the gaming world with either you do it yourself, or you're getting freelancers in.
Right.
freelance game pay is, frankly speaking, as somebody who is now a freelance writer in the corporate world, game money is peanuts.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
You've only got, I mean, Ulysses Spiel probably classes as the big guys by anybody's standards, but aside from that, you've only really got Wizards and Paizo, and even Wizards these days is a small, very very small creative team,
Right, subdivision of Hasbro,
who can draw on the marketing department of Hasbro,
right. And does a lot of freelance work. They outsource a lot. No, but my and I guess I didn't verbalize it correctly. My problem is companies like Pinnacle have the operating capital. Companies like Fantasy Flight. I mean, another decent sized company who recently went belly. They didn't go belly up. They got absorbed. Asmodee bought them a couple of years ago, and then Asmodee said, this is not financially solvent for us. So we're going to outsource the games department, and then we're going to keep the people at Fantasy Flight we want, and everybody else is going to be laid off. And that's a sucky thing, but that is how it happens. I mean, it's called business, and it doesn't necessarily have to be fair or correct. But sometimes it has to be. My issue is these companies. I mean, I would say Modiphius is just as big, if not bigger, than Ulysses Spiel or Pinnacle, and they don't do Kickstarters. They started with Kickstarters, and now they're, in Europe, they're one of the biggest distributors of RPGs, and I mean they've got some great, great licenses.
A lot of the people who are distributing through Modiphius are doing their Kickstarters, and then. As they get a distribution deal with Modiphius, it will often be an exclusive one, so it goes out with a Modiphius brand
right
on it. So Kickstarter, like anything else, is a useful tool. And if the big guys are going to use it, Black Void. I edited that, by the way.
Did you? I just got it in the mail. Christoph.
It is a beautiful,
oh, it's amazing. I'm loving what I'm reading so far. Christopher, the designer, the owner, whatever, he reached out to me. Nasser put him in touch with me, and he sent me a free PDF copy. And I'm like, I appreciate it. I love getting free stuff. Who doesn't? I feel bad when companies send me hard copy, but my eyes are old and I don't read PDFs very well. So I prefer the physical book, and I read as much of the PDF as I could get through, and I said I've got to have this. It's got to be in my library, and so I'm going to have Christopher on pretty soon in your seat.
You'll have fun. Like I said, I edited that, and I ended up having to make excuses to Christopher for how long it was taking me to edit.
Because you were enjoying reading it so much.
Well, it wasn't just that. I mean, it was. The rules are good,
right.
Solid set of rules, but the setting material in there
is
and all the different factions that he's got in different areas. And I got into that stage, and I would find that I'm trying to edit a piece about this particular faction and this particular leader and their likes and dislikes, and then I look up. And an hour has passed. Because all I've been thinking about is how I could use that. If I tie in a bit of this other faction, and then I could bring in this third one. And oh man, that would be just. And I would have been daydreaming a campaign for about an hour, just reading the raw files.
And not even editing, not even doing what you were paid to do.
I mean, to be honest, I was paid on a job rate, so length of time is. But it's that good.
I'm so happy to hear that.
As a professional, I've been a professional writer and editor for 30 years, and it wrong-footed me. It just captivated me completely.
That's awesome.
It's that good.
Well, there was
high recommendation.
Yeah, there was a couple of guys on my channel that were like, "Oh, you've got to get Black Void," and I was like, "I don't even know what that is," because you can't know everything. I mean, as much as my ear is to the ground to the hobby, there's so many Kickstarters, there's so many, and I guess, and I don't want to sound like I have a beef against like Pinnacle, because I love Pinnacle, I love Fantasy Flight. I love Ulysses Spiel. Like that whole bottom shelf is all Ulysses Spiel. So I don't want it to sound like I wish they would not use it as a pre-order process and give the little guys a chance to get stuff out.
Maybe, but I mean, one of the things that's speaking as one of the little guys, one of the things that forces you to do, really, is to up your game.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true.
And that pushes you into getting something as good as you can get it from the word go.
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna need a promo video for Kickstarter these days.
Yeah.
How are we gonna do that? And I'm really happy to work with the one that we got for Chivalry and Sorcery, done by Stephanie McKaylee of Stygian Fox, and her crew came in to help us with that. So we provided the text and some of the illustrations, and they
put it all together. Yeah.
And you've got to sort of try and do your best with everything from the products upwards. I mean, our version of Chivalry and Sorcery is like, you look at the older versions, the layout is functional 2-column black and white, few illustrations, and we've got this beautiful sort of 600-page full color
tome.
As for the 5th edition, and this is my personal copy with my name in it.
Hey, can I borrow that? I'll send it right back. I promise.
So we got sort of all this full color.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful layout artist Andy Cowley and sort of.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And we got Black Knights and so we wouldn't have done that if that really wasn't. You've got to up your game to at least match what's available on the market.
Right.
So it's all part of quality. How serious do you want to get? It's easier than ever to publish a game. You can publish straight to PDF, and there are dozens of companies doing these sort of $1 or $2 supplements of that. I think one of the ways to make most money, to be honest, I don't know how much money they make, but you write a list of 100 things, 100 names for books,
right?
And you put them into a PDF and upload it to DriveThruRPG. Maybe only 10 people will buy it, but for the amount of time that you've spent on it, $10 is probably good. And then you do, I don't know, 20 or 30 of these things, and then you bind them together in one big PDF and sell that for $5.
Right.
It's,
yeah. Well, it's free commerce, first of all. I mean, and like you said, it's free advertising if the Kickstarter goes well. And I've seen so many amazing products that have failed, or well, I should say, I felt they were amazing, or I thought they were going to be good, and they either barely eked out or they just didn't make it. And I feel, and it just made me the Mr. Mean in me, that these, Ulysses Spiel and Pinnacle and these guys that are doing these big name, Fading Suns. I'm a huge Fading Suns fan, so obviously I backed the Kickstarter, but then I kind of feel guilty for doing it because then I see this game over here by, this guy, and it's, he's asking for $20 for the game, and I'm like, I just blew my wad over here, I can't really afford that, so I gotta watch that, and then it doesn't get funded, and then I feel guilty, and I have a funny feeling that would have been a really good game. I know Fading Suns, I'm gonna be able to go into my local game store and have them order me a copy, or I can order it straight from Ulysses North America.
But one of the other aspects for that, to be perfectly honest, if you're running a small, or you want to run a small gaming company, you want to get a game out there, it doesn't cost you a great deal. It's going to cost you some to run a Kickstarter campaign, but it's not going to cost you the money that it is to get your artwork, get your distribution, get your printing, get your writers paid, and produce the game yourself. And
right.
If a game isn't going to get the support it needs, better you should lose $300 or $400.
Right. Right.
on your Kickstarter campaign, then you should lose several $1,000s on a failed game.
Right. Jay Gantry over at Feral Games Inc. We have this conversation all the time. And I'd like to say he's much cooler because he agrees with me. I'm just saying. I'm just tossing that out.
Look, it couldn't be mean if I agreed with you.
Exactly, right? But he's done a number of Kickstarters, and he's a very prolific writer, and I love his products. I have a whole shelf up there devoted to him. You know, he did Zombie Squad, he did Delve, he's done Legends, which is a phenomenal book. And I feel these games don't get enough attention. And I try to highlight them on my channel and stuff. And I've got a great rapport with Jay. He saw one of my videos because he was like, I was looking, because he doesn't make 5th edition games. He doesn't make Call of Cthulhu. He makes his own things, right? Yeah. And he's very good at it. And he goes through the whole process of writing and getting artists and forking out money. And he's like you. He's a full-time writer. This is his day job. And so I met him purely by incident through this channel. He was looking for channels that did other games, because there's 1,000,001 channels out there for D&D or Pathfinder. There's no channel out there talking specifically about chivalry and sorcery or Black Void. There's very few,
Yeah.
And so he reached out to me. I didn't know who he was, never heard of him before. And he said, hey, I make this game called Zombie Squad. I'm selling it on Drive-Thru RPG, and I think at the time it was like for free, or he was doing a Kickstarter, and it like barely squeaked by. And he's like, can I send you a copy for a review? I said, well, sure, send me a PDF. He said, no, I'd like to send you a physical copy if that's okay, because I've heard you say you're not fond of PDFs. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I like PDFs. I have a huge PDF library. I'm getting older. Reading on a PDF is not as easy as being able to put on my readers and open up a physical book and hold. There's just something. You and I are of that age. I'm sure as a well, and you're also of the same genre as me, or a generation of me, that the library was probably very instrumental in your youth.
Yeah,
I have very fond memories of spending hours in the library and just looking at everything. And to this day, I go to Barnes & Noble's, a huge retail book chain, and my wife has to drag me out. She's like, come on, we got to go. We got to eat. The kid's got a diaper change. Let's go. And I'm like, but there's a new book. So, yeah.
You can browse it. You can't browse on Amazon.
Yeah, and you can grab a book and hold it and sit down in the middle of the aisle and just flip through it and be like, ooh. But, so he sent me a copy, and I did a review, and it was funny because he sent me the chat that he was having with his co-writer or co-designer, and he's like, yeah, he just gets it. And that was like a great compliment to me. And I thought, this is a guy that is passionate about his hobby but doesn't take it too seriously, and he's making cool games. And so very, very privileged to say that I can call him friend now. And he's a great guy, and I think he's a great game designer and a great writer. But I think there's also that pain of not having the capital to put up to make an amazing game when it's going to be amazing, and trying to go to Kickstarter and then failing because unfortunately everybody's blown their wad on the Ulysses Spiel product. Or
well, the thing is, if you fail on Kickstarter, you still have the option of going back to the old way.
That's true.
If you can, and working out, how do I get this out? Okay, maybe I drop the color.
Right. Make some hard choices.
These days, printing in color and printing in black and white, the price difference is so
nominal. Yeah. I would just say stay away from printers in China for the most part, unless they have a U.S. associate.
Lithuania is my top tip for printers.
Really? My buddy uses Canada.
Lithuania and Poland have some.
Poland's getting real big into it now. Have you seen a game called Degenesis?
No.
It's by a Polish company called Six More Vodka.
Great name.
Yes, they are a art house. They are designers and graphic artists, and they work in all forms of media, music, print, digital. And they put out a game, and this game's been out for a couple of years now. It's called Degenesis, and it is it's after the fall of civilization, but it's all from the side of Europe. So Africa, England, everything. The U.S. is just a distant thought because they're from Poland. They don't know anything about the U.S. So they wrote a game about what they know about. And
it didn't stop Game Designers Workshop setting Twilight 2000 in Poland.
Amazing, right? Let me bear with me 1 second.
You got it there?
Oh yeah, I have everything, just about, except for Chivalry and Sorcery. I can't find my copy. This is the white sleeve version, so beautiful. And this is just the cover. And then they have 2 books and a nice poster. My buddy Craig sent this to me because he bought the limited edition, collector's edition, $250 for 2 books and a GM screen, but it came with a bunch of dice. But this is the Stark White edition, which is comes with a ribbon, so it's fancy. It's got a ribbon.
Yeah.
But
if a ribbon's fancy, let me just get our Chivalry and Sorcery out.
Oh, see there. Well, you're big time now. You're big time.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, when we get off the phone or when we get off the telly here.
Oh, that is gorgeous.
Yeah, and so have you played Vampire the Masquerade?
Just that picture's giving me a Mass Effect vibe.
Oh yeah.
I do love me some Mass Effects.
Well, and look at this. I don't know if my camera will do it justice, but
oh yeah.
We're talking.
That's gonna be a Kratos.
We're talking. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome to the max, and these guys are probably some of the nicest guys I've talked to, and they have, like I said, 6 more vodka. Is a big name over there. These guys do good work, and this is this game is for free on their website now.
Wow.
For a PDF. So if you go to degenesis.com, you can download all the books for free, and every single one of the books looks like this. But then they also sell it. Like this was, I think, 80 or $100 if you were having to ship. Shipping's going to kill you right now because of COVID.
Yeah.
And like I said, they have their collector's edition, which is the same thing. Comes with a couple of art plates. But my good friend Craig sent me this, which I love him. I can't thank him enough because it's beautiful. And
How's the system? Got a chance to try it yet?
Oh, well, I've played it a number of times. I love it. Do you remember White Wolf, Vampire the Masquerade?
Yeah.
The D10, system, die pool? It's the same exact system for the most part, with some tweaks, with D6s.
Oh, nice.
Yes, and amazing system. It flows really well. It plays really well. And, I went through a spout where I was, well, for lack of a better word, extremely poor. And the only way I had to get the PDF copy and then just print it at my job. Because we had
I did the same thing at home with the Mongoose Traveller Judge Dredd. But I did it
I just dropped a bunch of shit.
all the pages were white on black. It's like by the time I got it, the hardback book had sold out. I could only print it out at home. And it's black pages with white text. The ink costs alone.
You could have bought the book 3 times over.
Probably.
Yeah, but definitely do yourself a favor. You want to see some, what I like to call modern game design and modern publication. I think it'll be right up your alley. It's very adult. Because we are talking, there's like a sex cult, and it's not as dubious as it sounds, but they are pretty much all about the feel good, if you know what I mean. But they yes, but they have an agenda. They're not just about going out there and screwing everything they see. They have an agenda in the way they view the world. And you want to talk about just amazing writing. And to couple that with a great game, mechanic wise, that works, and amazing art. and it's for free. And it just
Yeah.
kills me that, they can do this. But now, granted, they also do stuff for like video games, and so they don't have a cheap price tag for their work, if you know what I mean. When you hire them, you're paying some money, but look at this, look what you're getting. That's what they did for free as a hobby,
There's some real creative stuff coming out of Poland at the moment.
Oh, they're on fire.
I mean, you've got CD Projekt Red and the Witcher series of video games.
Yeah.
Which I'm coming to very late. I'm about maybe a quarter of the way through Witcher 2 at the moment.
Oh wow, yeah.
So it's fresh to me.
I love it.
And the books that it's based on are Polish.
Yeah.
It's the original.
Have you read the books?
Yeah, not all of them.
Yeah.
I've read the first 2 books, I think. But then one of them, I think, what I thought was the first book in the series, turns out it's a series of short stories.
Right. But what a great series, though. Yes.
Because they used a few of those on the TV series.
Right. And Henry Cavill, amazing.
Oh,
Just.
We did when we saw him painting his Warhammer minis. We did send him a copy of Chivalry and Sorcery.
Did you really? Did you get any? Did you get a response back or anything?
No, we haven't. But it was via the agent. Don't even know if he's got it.
Oh, the agent might have went. Oh, he doesn't need that.
Yeah,
went home, gave it to his kids or something. That's the cool.
Yeah, that's one of the tricks you do for marketing.
Right.
So
Right.
If you get a mention, it's worth far more than.
Well, what's the old saying in the show business? Even a negative review is still a review, right? It's free. It's free advertisement.
There's no such thing as bad news.
Bad press. Yeah, exactly. I've got Mike Pondsmith's going to come on the show as soon as he's done. Yeah.
There is a living legend.
Right. Well, his son and my son are the same age. And we used to tease each other because he was back in the Bay Area and stuff back when I lived back there, and we would always tease and say he's my mirror image because he's white or he's black married to a white woman, and I was white married to a black woman, and we both had a boy the same age. So it was like with the mirror universe, and he had the goatee. I didn't have a goatee, so obviously he's the evil one. So
all I can say is, yay, mixed race families.
Yeah, and a super nice guy.
My family is also mixed race.
Yeah. My oldest boy is mixed. Mother and I didn't work out, but my current wife is amazing and supports me in my hobby. She doesn't get it, but she does support me, obviously. All of this,
Likewise.
Yeah. But
I did try one game of Pathfinder.
Mine too. Pathfinder first, and she went. My wife's a scientist by trade,
Right.
and so she went. Well, why do I get a +2 in strength? I was like, well, because you're very strong, and but how did I get to be strong? What makes? And I'm like, okay, we're done. I can't do this. She.
My wife tells me that she was trying to nobble the idea of her gaming from the word go because she was playing a half-orc barbarian. Okay, what's your character name? Fluffy. And what she was expecting was us to go, you can't play a half-orc barbarian called Fluffy. And we all just went, oh, that's such an awesome name.
Right. Because who's going to argue with you, right?
Yeah.
That's the way I look. That's the way I took it. My wife just didn't get it. She's too analytical, and she wanted to know the why for and the where for everything, and it wasn't her cup of tea. But
Yeah.
I will say one of the greatest compliments to me is she would always be the hostess when my friends would come over, and she would either go to Costco and get pizza or whatever, and it's the hostess with the mostest kind of deal. But then when they all left, she would be like, so why did you have the bartender poison his drink? And she would ask all these questions. So she was listening. She was very involved in the story, and I would bounce things off of her, and she would ask questions, and it would help me further, my story or whatever. And so it was kind of great to have that third party outside source that kind of knew everything, and it was a lot of fun. And she still to this day, she listens, but she usually goes to bed a little earlier now because we're getting up there in age.
Yeah, I've got to admit that when I was living in the Middle East, I was up until 2, 3 in the morning, and then sort of up again at 7, and kept going, and then sort of occasionally just bombed. But now back in the UK, with a lot of outdoor life, my God, I'm sleeping at last.
I know, isn't it a good feeling? I stayed up till 2:30 in the morning last night.
I wake up at 6:30 in the morning, and I'm fresh.
Yeah.
I can't remember when I last felt like that.
Well, it's a different culture over there too, though. And you're a stranger living in a strange land, so you have to adapt. And then you're trying to maintain I would only assume, I don't want to speak for you, but I would assume that you were maintaining your relationship with your friends, over on the other side of the pond. So therefore, your time schedule must have just been horrendous.
To an extent, yeah. I mean, the thing is, when I first went across there, there wasn't really social media.
Right.
Nor did we initially have Wi-Fi. So I used to sort of go down to a coffee shop that might have Wi-Fi and send a weekly email
to your friends or what? Yeah.
And then I mean, these days and how far we've come in 15 years,
Amazing.
I've had a sort of 4-week, 5-week hiatus while I arranged to move from one country to another,
right.
And spend my 14 days in isolation.
Right.
And,
unfortunately.
But on Wednesday, I'm going to be starting up again my regular 2nd edition AD&D game.
Excellent.
For my face-to-face and previously face-to-face players who are many of them in the Middle East, and one now has got as far as Manila in the Philippines.
Close.
Yeah. So I mean, what phenomenal times are these in which we live, despite all this
craziness
and social distance.
I can't wait.
We can get into our heart's content.
Yeah. And that's one of the jokes I used to always make, is that when we were kids, we lads, teenagers, we had all the time in the world, right? But we didn't have the money. Now, as older gentlemen, we have the money, but we have no time.
I think in some ways, I don't think that's just like life 40 years ago and now. You do have more commitments as an adult. But sorry, I was saying in some ways it's not. I was meaning to say in some ways that is a difference between life 40 years ago and now.
Right.
Everybody is bombarded all the time
with so much
to do, and things to grab their attention.
Yeah, it's video games are the bane of role-playing games, in my opinion. I love my video games. I stayed up till 2:30 last night playing video games. Why? Because I could.
I'm functioning just after now the last couple of days, and I can play The Witcher again. Yes.
Yeah.
I've taken to. I'm a reformed cigarette smoker. I'm using an e-cigarette here, but I have taken to smoking a pipe. Purely because I have to go and stand outside and just smoke a pipe for about half an hour.
Right.
It's half an hour where I can just let my mind wander, and I'm away from electronic devices, says he, knowing that he sometimes sneakily takes his smartphone out there as well.
You're hiding it when the wife is, what are you doing? Nothing.
Yeah, but for the last few days it's been very, very rainy in England, and so I go out onto the porch, and I don't know what your porch might be like, but I have a vision of American porches that they all, everywhere throughout the US, run the entire length of the house, and they're about 6 feet wide, and you go out there to smoke your corncob pipe or whatever, play a banjo or something.
You are very close, sir.
And my porch is about 1 square meter right outside the front door, and I kind of try to shelter under that when it's raining heavily, so
you don't get drenched. Yeah, my porch is covered. It runs the length of the front of my house. It's about a meter wide. It goes from my front door out, and then on my back I have a back patio that is about, I'd say, 8 feet by 10 feet. and I can sit out there, and I can I sometimes do sit out there and have my coffee and take my iPad with me, and I go through my email. It's when you run a channel like this, even though I don't have tens of thousands of subscribers, it is a little bit of work, to stay up on the social media. And I don't do Facebook. I'm on MeWe, and so
I'm on MeWe as well, so I'm mostly Facebook, but I've got a MeWe account.
I think we are friends on MeWe.
Yeah,
I think you did right after the game. So yeah, I can't stand all the politics and everything on Facebook. So my wife is on Facebook. So when I want to see something on Facebook, I go, "Hey, honey, show me." So and she's like,
She got to Facebook again for similar sort of thing. And the politics, I've largely come to ignore it. Now I've learned to tune it out a bit. I just occasionally make a snarky comment about our politics,
right?
But it's been kind of with the U.S. elections coming up,
Well, they're going on right now.
It's not my country.
Yeah. Can I come live with you? Because I don't want to be here anymore.
I think the last election I got really caught up in it all because I wasn't expecting it. And all the American friends and social media is all about the U.S. elections, so you start having opinions on it.
Right.
And then when you've got opinions, you want to express them. So I got really caught up in it. And this year, it's an American affair. I know who I want to win.
Right.
I know specifically who I want to lose.
And let's leave it at that.
and let's leave it there. Yeah. I'm getting less needy about sharing my opinion on stuff like that. I support friends who have opinions that agree with mine, but I don't necessarily unfriend people who don't agree with me.
Right. Yeah. And politics is one of those things that can politics and money can ruin friendships.
Yeah,
and so I try to keep the two out. I try to keep them separate.
Yeah, I mean the old British thing is you never talk about money or religion.
Right. Exactly. Well, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true, right? Yeah. So I did have my friend Brian, who did back the Kickstarter for Chivalry and Sorcery for 5th edition, or the 5th edition of CNS. Blah, blah, blah. Say that 5 times fast. Because not to be confused with D&D 5th edition. They have nothing to do with each other.
We refer to it as the other 5th edition.
Right. The better one.
We think.
I'm not a fan of D&D, so...
Actually, I like a lot of what 5th edition did.
Oh, I do too. And it's
open gaming, wide open.
Right. And 5th edition is good for what it is. It's not my cup of tea. Now, with that being said, I'm in a Sunday night Saltmarsh campaign with the gentleman who's asking this question right here, Brian, who also had the podcast 2D6 in a Random Direction. But I'm in that game to A, support my good friend, and B, to hang out with all the friends that I don't get to see anymore. And they all like to play. I prefer Pathfinder 2nd edition. And that's just my druthers. I can't push that on anybody else.
I haven't quite got into 2nd edition of Pathfinder yet, but I do like the 1st edition.
Yeah, see, and the 1st edition was way too crunchy for me, and way too many books, and just too much for this old mind to keep up with.
Towards the end of its lifespan, it did start getting weighed down.
Yeah.
Nearly falling down under the weight of his own supplements.
Yeah. So Brian's question to you is, he would love to hear...
Which he has had to wait nearly 2 hours for you to ask and me to answer.
We got some questions out of the way, though. We did get some questions. And let's face it, this is just an excuse for you and I to bullshit. I'm just going to throw it on... I'm going to throw it on YouTube later. That's an afterthought.
On another diversion now, I've interrupted you.
It's all good, man. It's all good. But Brian wants to know, he would love to hear your thoughts about how CNS 5e is going and how he views it in the RPG market and getting new eyes on it and into it, because this renaissance that's happening with gaming, and so many younger, I don't even want to say younger because that's not fair, so many people coming into role-playing games that were never in it before. So
So I'm not actually privy to the all of the sales figures. I could be if I wanted to be, but when
there,
we first launched the PDF, what have you, I was asking all the time, how far are we from copper staying to this? It's going well. The Kickstarter exceeded our expectations. We bust our goal 3 times over. I don't know if you've never run a Kickstarter. A lot of the pledges come in if you've done your marketing right. But a lot of the pledges come in on the first day
and the last.
So we made our goal in 16 hours, and that felt like very it validated us.
Right.
We thought that would be interest, and there was. So we had more than 600 backers. I think around 650 backers on the Kickstarter.
Excellent.
We've sold a good number of PDFs outside of the Kickstarter and outside of the bricks and mortar or bits and mortar, scheme where you can get a free PDF if you buy a book from a participating shop.
Right.
It hasn't been entirely plain sailing. We got our North American shipments, our distribution shipments, into a warehouse in Michigan, I believe, 2 days before it locked down for coronavirus, and it was locked down for more than 2 months, maybe 3 months. So we didn't get stuff into the shops as we would have wanted, and
right.
even if we had, people are not going and hanging out at their local game shops
right.
anymore.
Right.
So we rethunk a bit to coin a word, and we started targeting sort of how we could sell hard copies online, and there's obviously distribution deals. What I can say more about is the reception of 5th edition. I very much felt when we put it together that this was the edition that I'd always wanted to see. This was the one. It's been nearly 20 years since the previous edition. We had
right.
a lot of ideas. Things have moved on. This is full colour. This is the treatment it deserved. And the feedback that we're getting is people agree with us.
And isn't that nice? Doesn't that feel good?
It's very, very gratifying. We've done quite a lot with the new edition to sort of broaden the game's scope. I think earlier editions, the 4th edition did quite a lot. 1st and 2nd edition were really sort of focused on medieval France and England, that's the northwestern Europe, as a inspiration for the setting. 3rd edition went more fantasy, which proved quite unpopular with fans, myself included.
Right.
4th edition brought it back to a sort of more medieval influence, and then 5th edition we've really been able to pull out the stops. We've had 20 more years of historical research
right.
Under our belts. Our command of our knowledge of the period has gone up drastically, and there's been massive amounts of academic research into what would formerly have been sort of quite hard to find
right.
Information. And so we've been able to broaden the scope of it. No longer is Christianity the only religion covered in the core rulebook. We've got Judaism and Islam in there, which enables us to then, outside of the core rulebook, very easily slip into books for medieval Spain.
Right.
Or Outremer, the Crusader states.
Yeah.
So we've broadened it out geographically. We've broadened it out religiously. So we did say don't discuss religion, didn't we? We got Christianity, Judaism, and Islam in the core.
If you ask me for $10, I'm going to hang up on you.
as well as paganism, so you can go out into Lithuania and Estonia and what have you. So we've broadened it out considerably. We've streamlined the mechanics. I like to say that CNS it takes you a while to create a character. There's complexity in character creation, but in play, it's very, very fast.
Right.
And it seems to have hit the mark. We will always be a niche game.
Right.
Not everybody wants serious historical game.
Yeah, simulationism. Some people want fantasy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when most people talk about medieval fantasy, they're talking about Ren Fair,
Right.
fantasy,
or Monty Python.
Us, all of the designers for this edition grew up in the old world. We all come from medieval communities.
Right.
When we talk about medieval fantasy,
has a different meaning than what a lot of people think. There's no orcs running around.
Well, actually, we do, and I've just finished editing, and I'm now proofreading our Goblins, Orcs, and Trolls supplement. So it is fantasy. It's medieval fantasy.
Right.
But here's some really cool stuff. I had to do. I went quite in depth into what medieval people thought about orcs, and Andy Cowley, who was writing it, and I sort of co-wrote the earlier parts of it, went into sort of the etymology of the names of orcs. So we've come up with about sort of 4 different ways of dealing with orcs. There are the evil spirits. The origin of the Anglo-Saxon word orcneus means evil spirit. There's the demonic orcs and goblins. The first mention of goblin is of a demon who was infesting the town of Evreux in Normandy. And then there's your typical fantasy orcs and goblins. But what interests me is if you had these races, these species rather, the orcs and goblins, in a medieval setting, what would there's something just blown off the side of my house and across the garden. Oops.
Was that orc spirit?
What would medieval people think about them? How would they fit into Christian theology? And what I discovered looking into the theology behind it is quite fascinating. St. Augustine, the 5th century theologian who basically created the mindset, the theology of the medieval church, said that there are many strange and wondrous creatures in the world. He set up, if something, the definition of human was that you are mortal and rational. Angels and demons were rational but immortal.
Right.
And animals are irrational but
mortal.
So human is rational and mortal. Therefore, it follows that what is rational and mortal must be human. And if it is human, it is descended from Adam and has within it the capacity for redemption.
There you go.
So in medieval theology, we've just recently had this on the online gaming communities. We've had this debate about are orcs and goblins evil? Are they inherently evil? Are they perpetually evil? Medieval theology accounts for no. They're not inherently evil.
Right.
They have the possibility of redemption, and in fact, in Byzantine times, in medieval times, they had a myth of the dog-headed men,
right?
Kynocephaline. And in some Byzantine texts, it's considered that St. Christopher was a doghead, a Kynocephalus. There was actually iconic imagery of St. Christopher, the patron saint of travellers, your St. Christopher medal,
right,
with a dog's head. And that, to me, opens up this marvellous idea of orcs and goblins in a setting, a fantastical version of medieval Europe, where there is an orcish bishop.
Right.
And I was like,
and why not?
So cool.
Yeah, and why not? Because why couldn't he be? If because like you said, they don't have to be inherently evil or maniacal. A lot of role playing games will take the point of view where you can, like Midgard for D&D allows you to play a gnoll, which in traditional D&D is an evil character, right, or is an evil race. But in this, Midgard is my favorite setting for 5th edition. You can play a Minotaur, as a player character, and he can be a cleric of a good god. Why not? right? There's always the breaks in stereotype.
We've always had in Chivalry and Sorcery the opportunity to play what people would consider monstrous races. In the first edition, the vampires and werewolves and orcs and goblins were playable races. And Ed Symbolis wrote a famous essay in the late 70s, early 80s called "Monsters Are People Too."
Yeah, I remember.
And that's been very much a guidance for us.
Yeah.
If you want your evil goblins and your evil orcs,
sure.
You go back to the demonic ones, or the evil spirits. They are inherently evil. So it's pick what you want. What do you want in your game?
I remember one time I was running D&D years ago, and the town was being plagued by goblins. And they didn't know what to do, so they cobbled what all villagers do. They cobbled together enough money, and they brought in some heroes. In comes the party members. And so the party members go in, and one of the players was playing a cleric. And they tracked, and then the ranger was able to track the goblins back to their lairs, a small little cave, in the mountains somewhere, and they tracked them. And the cleric actually spoke goblin. So all the other players were like, well, we're going to go in there, we're going to kill him, we're going to remove this infestation. And the cleric, who, by the way, in my gaming group, was actually a student of seminary school. He was on his way to be a reverend.
Brilliant.
So he said, okay, well, let's be ready to defend ourselves, but let's talk to them. And I remember going, what? And he said, yeah. He says, I want to talk to him. And I'm like, well, do you speak Goblin? He's like, why, yes, I do. So, I started making these, I started making these pig-like sounds because that's the only thing we could think of, and, we made up some funny words and we spoke back and forth, and he basically said, why are you attacking? So we had this whole diatribe of, trying to figure out why the goblins, instead of just kicking in the door, killing the monsters, going back and collecting our gold, we went in, we knocked on the door, and we said, hey, we're from, St. Jude's, and, we'd like to tell you about our God and Savior. Right? We're Jehovah's Witnesses, and we'd like to tell you about, and it was really one of my fondest memories of running D&D for my friends. And they wind up finding that there was a monster further in the caves of the goblins that was forcing them to go out and do these things. The goblins didn't want to do it because they were fine living in their little mountain cave and living off the land and, eating their mushrooms and doing what they were doing until this bigger, badder monster came along and subjugated them. And so they had to do it or else they would die. And, that's called survival in my book. That doesn't make you evil. That just means you're being oppressed. And so the players wind up killing it was a minor demon. They wind up killing the minor demon, setting the goblins free, and then the humans and the goblins created a commerce by the humans would buy the mushrooms from the goblins because they lived in the cave where the mushrooms grew, and everybody was happy, and so the village knew nothing but prosperity and everybody was happy, and so then it was goblins aren't necessarily a bad thing in our world because, they're intelligent, they can communicate. You just because you don't speak their language doesn't mean they're not smart, and it was a lot of fun, and
I love that kind of creative sort of approach to problem solving as
right.
well, and also that the GM is ready with a reason why the goblins have moved down.
That was running on my feet, buddy. I was like, well, then why are they doing? Oh crap! I got to come up with something.
But then that falls back on just the general knowledge and the understanding of tropes and ideas.
Right.
Why would somebody move out? It might be the first thing that you clutch.
Yeah.
There's enough monsters move them forward. But,
right.
You've probably had in your mind sort of at some point the idea that can cause movements of people. So,
right. And totally so. And never even probably, and this is, 20 plus years ago, It never dawned on me probably why I did it, but being a fan of history and being a fan of the world and these fantastical realms that we live and play in, it just made sense, right? They weren't bothering anybody before, and you just make that quick decision of, oh crap,
something has to have happened.
right? Why else would they go out and do? They weren't doing it before. They never had a problem with the goblins before. They didn't even know there were goblins in the mountains because they never went to the mountains, and the goblins never came down to the farmlands because they didn't have a need. So yeah, fun stuff like that. So that was.
It also brings you into some, the how conflict happens. And very often it is contesting for resources. Now,
right.
Another monster's forced us out. We need these resources.
Yeah.
Oh, you're using them.
Yeah. Now we have, and it, like I said, my friend went off to become a preacher, but I just thought it was that alternate thinking, whereas everybody else was like, okay, we're just going to go and kill the goblins, go back and get our gold, and woohoo, and maybe we'll find some cool magical items in the cave, and it never digressed to that at any point. We had this. I would say probably 10 sessions of playing every Saturday night, for 5-6 hours in the evening of, role playing out. We had very little combat in that campaign, but everyone was like, oh my God, that was so awesome. We had so much fun. So
in my head, I've got that cartoon from the first edition DMG. Now, you didn't talk to it. The last monster we talked to ate half the party.
Oh, and then the next panel is the gelatinous cube, absorbing the dwarf. I think he has a question for you. I'm not gonna go talk to him. You go talk to him. Yeah. So, go ahead.
No, fine. You look like you've got another question.
I did. I was thinking. If what aside from chivalry and sorcery. What's your favorite game to play?
At the moment, the Fantasy Trip.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Because it's in a way because it's so different from chivalry and sorcery. Chivalry and sorcery can take an hour or two to make a character. Fantasy Trip, you can make a character in 3 minutes.
Right.
Chivalry and sorcery is a little bit loose on the tactical combat. And the Fantasy Trip is all about the tactical.
Right.
The tactical combat. So yeah, it's a very, very radically different kind of game.
Yeah.
And I'm getting a lot of use out of it at the moment. One of the things I really love about it is if you're using the base, the original books, they're small enough to fit into your jacket pocket. And if you've got the new version, definitely get the mini box that has
the books all condensed
and in the one box because it fits into a pocket. You can carry it with you at all times. And my copy of has been around with me in almost every country I've visited.
And you've been around.
Jacket. Now, that being said, in these days of COVID, you're not going to sit down at a bar or a coffee bar with a mate and say, "Oh, let's just go and play this."
Right.
So,
unfortunately.
But it's got solo dungeons. You can.
It's got everything you need.
When I say I enjoy playing with myself, I am referring to tabletop gaming. Anything else?
Yeah. Use your imagination. I take no disclaimer on the Mr. Mean Show. We do not condone.
Makes you go blind.
Notice we're both wearing glasses.
But yeah, so I really, really enjoy the Fantasy Trip. I think it's for what it does absolutely superb.
Any games come to mind that you wish you were playing or you could play more?
Traveller.
Yeah, classic.
Ever since Traveller was the second role-playing game that I ever bought. I used my Christmas money in 1981 to get this little black box that just had been eyeing me.
And it was just, you're talking the one that was just, it was the black box and in white letters it said Traveler. Is that the
red letters Traveler, and then the white letters were, "This is Free Trade
Beowulf. Yeah.
Main drive is gone. We're losing air.
Yeah.
Mayday.
Mayday.
That's probably not verbatim, but
it's pretty darn close.
And I've had that issue that besets a lot of gamers where people want to play fantasy more than they want to play science fiction.
I can't fathom. I'm a science fiction guy. I love sci-fi, but and I don't understand, and I think it's just because fantasy was first. I really do. You know, we have Conan.
Everybody knows what a horse and a sword looks like.
Exactly. You and Guy were talking with Omar about about getting it wrong for like sci-fi. You know, playing like Guy doesn't like to play in an established world except for like Star Trek and Star Wars because he's pretty familiar with those. And I remember years ago when Decipher did the Star Trek RPG. And I thought it was funny because, you know, they got the license to do Star Trek, and then they got the license to do Lord of the Rings. And it used the same exact mechanical system. It was a 2D6 system or a D6 system, if I remember correctly. And I just thought it was funny because I thought you could have Spock fighting a Balrog. Because you could. You could. Fascinating, yes. Fascinating. You got to raise the eyebrow, though. Fascinating, Captain. But I just thought, for me, my mind, and I read a ton of fantasy as a kid. You know, Fred Saberhagen and, you know, the Shannara series and all the, you know, Citadel of the Sun and, you know, all these great fantasy novels, Tolkien, of course, but one of the best sci-fi novels I read was Anne McCafferty's Pern. And that one just grabbed me like you wouldn't believe. And I read everything. And of course, her health is failing. And I believe she did pass on. And her son finished the last novel, which I have not read yet. And I'm doing myself a disservice, so I should go get it. But one of my earliest, and I love that I can just reach the shelf, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh.
And
yeah.
I had Brett Bernstein on the show a couple months ago. You know, and he's not a technology guy. You know, and he bought the license. He got the right to reproduce this and everything. He's not the original designer of Princess Intermediate or Pig Games. But I have the original box set. In fact, you can see it. It's right there underneath my original box set of Torg. And I'm opening it up. I'm going through it because of the nostalgia. And I'm like, oh, I really love. And the glue, the glue is so dry that it literally pages started falling out. And so my buddy was like,
I don't open my first edition Chivalry and Sorcery book very often for just that.
Right, and I felt so bad, and so I realized, one of my friends said, you know, they did an updated version. It's not really updated. Brett went in and cleaned up the text, fixed some typos, made it a little clearer, because, you know, 20 years ago, they didn't have PDFs. Yeah. You know, it was a rich text font file somewhere, and he was able to get it, and he had to clean it up, convert it to a PDF, read it, lay it out in InDesign. And he's a grognard like us. He's our age, and he's like, you know, I didn't want to see this game go away, you know. And I'm like, I'm so glad you didn't, because it's a great game, you know. And you know, he's another small press, you know, guy that's publishing games, and he's got some great stuff out there. And it was just so fun to talk to him, because he's not a computer guy at all. You know, he's like, Discord, what is Discord? He's like, I have it, I don't, you know. And he's like, you know,
I'm the same with Discord.
Oh, you've done great though. I mean,
got me into Discord.
Yeah. Well, Nasser hit me up this morning and was like, what's your phone number so I can get you on WhatsApp? And I'm like, oh, I have a company phone as my personal phone, so I can't install that. And he's like, oh, all right, well, I'll have him reach out to you on Discord. And I'm like, does he know how? Because no offense, I know he's around my age, and it's, I'm in technology, so I know it's easy for me, but
with Traveller, it's one of those games. I have every edition of Traveller, and most of the supplements.
I think I have two of the editions. I have the new Mongoose version.
Yeah, so I've got both Mongoose versions.
Is there two?
Yeah.
Oh.
The current one, the colour one, is Mongoose second edition. I've got Classic Traveller. My original's still Mega Traveller. I've got
Mega.
Traveller. What came after Mega Traveller? Oh, the New Era. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got the core books and a few supplements for that. I've got Traveller 4, Traveller 5. I've got GURPS Traveller full range.
I have GURPS Traveller.
Hero. I've got Traveller 20, the D20 version that was done. C20.
I'm sorry.
And I absolutely love Traveller. For me, it defines what a science fiction game should be, and it is probably my most underused game of all.
Right.
Certainly for the amount of material that I have for it, because trying to convince a bunch of fantasy nuts to try a science fiction game,
it's like pulling teeth.
The first, are there lightsabers in it? Well, no, not as. Oh, you want space wizards?
Right? And it's so hard. I live here in Duluth, Minnesota, and it's a D&D town, and I'm amazed that I found 5 people to play Pathfinder with. I really am. And we started out playing D&D. We started out playing Midgard campaign, but the rules just don't work for me. It's not my cup of tea.
I think from a design perspective, 5th edition has made some really amazing design choices.
Oh yeah, it's not a bad system. It's not a bad system.
There are 2 choices that put together render it a little bit boring for me in combat. And the first is that the advantage-disadvantage system. Roll an extra die. It's genius. No longer do we have to fiddle about with crunchy little modifiers to die rolls. That is genius.
Mm-hmm.
And the second is a design decision made on very, very good design principles, which is to lower the armor classes.
Yes.
And have sort of slightly lower bonuses. But invariably in D&D, when you match that up with the advantage-disadvantage system, you are going to hit most of the time.
Yep.
And that, essentially, if you miss an attack in D&D or Pathfinder, you have lost a turn.
Right.
And losing turns is boring
for
players.
Right.
So it's a good game design decision.
Well, bore me and die.
Right. But the problem is that because you mostly hit, it just becomes hit point attrition.
Right.
And there's an extent you cannot say that D&D has always been about hit point attrition. You've got to wear them down to 0, But in 3rd edition, you had to make tactical decisions.
Yeah.
To do that, and in 5th edition, you essentially just have to convince your games master that you deserve advantage.
Right. And Rip, you're a car salesman. Yeah. How can I wiggle my way? How can I wiggle advantage out of this situation? And what I find is a lot of people want to play rogues because rogues get advantage on when they've got it. So then I went to one convention and they asked me to run D&D and I said sure. 5th edition. It hadn't been out very long, maybe a year. And I got to the game table and everybody was running a variation of a rogue, and I was like, well, this is no fun. And it turned out to be fun because of charisma. I try to be silly and tell. I do voices. I make the story fun, and I tried to put them in situations where being a rogue wasn't what was needed, right? And so they still got to do their roguery, but they had to think on their feet, and we wound up having fun. But it was my least fun convention adventure that I had ever done. For me.
I'm gonna hold you to an earlier promise when you said that it was going to be chaotic, and if you need to go for a pee, go for a pee. Yeah. I'm going to take you up on that right now. I've been sat here for more than 2 hours.
Yeah, go for it.
At our age,
So he's going to go take a pee. We have been chatting for 2 hours and 14 minutes. It is awesome. This is going to be one of those TLDRs. I totally understand. And I just learned what TLDR is. I didn't know what it meant. Too long, didn't read. So in that case, I don't expect everybody to sit here. This is literally just me and Andy having a great time. And if you choose to sit along and follow with it and you learn a little something, or you enjoy it, that is great. I appreciate you spending the time to watch, and we'll probably be wrapping it up here pretty soon because my little guy's going to wake up from his nap. But I truly want to give a huge shout out to Nasser and to Omar and Mohammed and all those guys over at the Gulf role-playing community, because they put me in touch with Andy, and I feel like he's almost a kindred spirit. And I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation beyond words. He's just an incredible guy to talk to, and we're of the same age, and kind of the same build, so to speak. Our stats line up, if you know what I mean. And so a huge thank you to Nasser for putting us in touch and getting me to run that one shot of Symbaroum that was so chaotic. I mean, we went through a 2-hour adventure in like 48 minutes. And then we had another 10 minutes of just chatting, and it was so much fun. And for those that don't know, Andrew played the goblin Fenya in the Symbaroum game. I was just reminiscing and thanking Nasser and filling the void of talking about how you played Fenya the goblin with her pig Varula. And how, what a great job it was. And I was thanking everybody for sitting here for 2 hours, probably having the need to take a pee as well. And it's going to be the TLDR, which I just found out what that meant. I didn't know what that meant.
What was the one that got me recently? Oh, TIL. I had no idea why I kept posting TIL. It's like, today I learned.
Oh, okay. I did know that one, but I didn't realize I knew it. But yeah. Too long, didn't read. I didn't know that, because we have babbled now for 2 hours and 16 minutes and 55 seconds, so almost 17 minutes. So I do greatly appreciate your time. You could be working right now, and I don't want you to work.
At some point, I'm gonna have to.
Right, and so I was gonna start to wrap it up, and is there any projects you're working on that you'd like the community to know about, or anything like that, or anything you want to promote, or anything like that?
Yeah, the one that I'm working on at the moment is I'm when I get the time writing the early feudal source book for chivalry and sorcery. And in CNS, we break down sort of the medieval period into or the high and late medieval period, as historians, as academics would call it, the period about 1000 AD to 1500 AD, into 4 periods: the early feudal, high chivalry, the late feudal, and the waning feudal period. And mostly what distinguishes those periods in the core rulebook is your parental vocations, because guilds, for instance, didn't develop until later on in the Middle Ages, didn't develop fully, and the kind of technology that you might have, for your knights, for your soldiers. So the waning feudal period is the great Maximilian plate armor and heavy war horses, full jousting lances. And since I'm a fairly dedicated student of medieval history, I know that it's a lot more than that. There are different societal influences, there's different thoughts. So what I'm trying to do is that I'm hoping that this one will be something of an experiment. It's hope it will be the start of a series of period source books, one for each of the periods. So the early feudal period is from about 1000. We're actually saying 1050 because 54, because that's when the great schism between the Eastern Church and the Western Church happens. It's a big big impact on the rest of the Middle Ages. So the preaching of the Second Crusade in 1146. So as an example of the kind of things that happened during that period, I've mentioned the Great Schism. You have the Norman conquest of England, the Norman conquest of Sicily. You have the First Crusade. You have the Reconquista in Spain, the taking back of lands from the Muslims, the Moors. So that would be El Cid,
right?
The great from that period. You've got knights in hauberks and kite shields. This kind of
right.
kind of knight. You've got a load of other things happening at the same time. You've got the start of the scholastic movement in the intellectual world. You've got new developments, expansion of population, growth of trade, and it's still a little bit wild and woolly at this period. It's not reaching population maximum. So there's all these kind of themes, and I'm able to dig into an awful lot of material. For instance, what's magic like at that time? Because even though we, as 21st century people, know that the magic never existed, medieval people believed that it did. So I have here a book called Picatrix. This was a medieval grimoire of magical rituals and a magical theory. So you see some of the diagrams and what have you.
Nice.
There. And this was published or translated into Latin in 1300. So it's before, in the early feudal period, this is not available in Latin. It was, however, a translation of an Arabic book that was published in the 10th century. So it was around in Arabic, and as I've been looking into it more and more, sort of, we picture wizards, sort of the Dr. John Dee style of wizard, or Michael Scott, with their Latin tomes and what have you. And in the early feudal period, if you were a wizard, you probably wanted to be speaking Greek and Arabic as your scholarly languages.
Right.
And an awful lot of magical materials, like the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, were translated in the 1140s into Latin. There's a chap who did the translations who lived somewhere around Bristol. His name escapes me. It's in my notes. I make notes so that I don't have to remember these things. There's all kinds of fascination about narrowing it down to these particular periods and showing what flavours each period has. So you don't get sort of the flowering of chivalry and courtly love until the high chivalric period, the early feudal period. Knights are still pretty brutal, and they made them swear oaths, the peace and truth of God, which were very ineffective to stop them creating trouble. And there are all kinds of rules that are really obscure. Like it was illegal under the peace of God to burn down a peasant's cottage during a tournament, because they weren't tournaments like the lists like you might see in A Knight's Tale or something with people. It was basically a mock battle. It could cover an area of several square miles.
Right.
So it's illegal to burn down a peasant's cottage during a tournament. And I love that there had to be a rule for that.
Do we really need to say this?
And you couldn't kill the peasants.
Right. Who's going to work the land?
But you could burn down a peasant's cottage if you suspected that a knight from the opposing tournament team was hiding inside it.
So in other words, you could, if the peasant gave you a front, you could burn it down and just say, "Oh well, Sir Bob was in there."
Yeah, so you're an ex-cop, so why did you burn there then? Because I had reasonable suspicion.
No, that's not going to float. We need something a little more. So, and that's a book you're working on?
Yeah, the way I'm trying to structure it is for chivalry and sorcery. We have three sort of main styles that people might game the system. One is to run a historical campaign, or a strict, what I would call a strict historical campaign. So you won't have orcs and goblins,
Right.
And you'll set it in medieval Europe. You'll use a historical background, and what I would hope is that people don't say, "Oh no, you can't do that because that didn't happen in history." But this historical background is here, and if you change it, then well, now we're writing an alternative history.
Right.
You would have what I would call a medieval fantasy, which is you add in some of the more fantastical elements. Wizards are more, present in greater numbers. Their magic actually works.
Right.
There might be other intelligent species out there, and then we have people often like making their own worlds for chivalry and sorcery that are based on the Middle Ages and
to me, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah,
I love to see other people's take on things.
What I've tried to do when I've outlined it is to structure it in such a way that it appeals to all three of those aspects. So look at themes that are common in the early feudal period. Look at medieval Europe at that time, and I've set myself the what is now to me terrifying page count of trying to do a potted history of each country in one page, because otherwise libraries are full of medieval history.
Right. I was going to say that's a tall order.
But I would never publish.
Right.
Nobody wants the early feudal sourcebook, volume 13.
I'm eagerly awaiting. It's on my wish list.
My advice to you would be to go down to a library or a bookshop that's full of them. Then to look at world building aspects. Roughly how many people are going to be in the countries, roughly what's a good rate of urbanization, how big are your cities, and then also to look at personalities from the period. And the personalities section will have chivalry and sorcery statistics for fantastic warrior woman like Gaymath Turkea, who's this black African captain of archers who fights in the siege of Valencia for the Moorish side. She brought over 300 African women archers with her. And Isabel of Conche, who led her troops in a battle in Normandy against her rival, whose name now escapes me, at Evreux, the town where there was the goblin demon. So the only part of the book that I'm really thinking will have chivalry and sorcery stats is the personalities.
Yeah,
section.
that actually sounds kind of cool. If you can take those stats and put them in your, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's neat.
For whatever game you're running.
Yeah.
And the rest of the book there's a sort of fairly in-depth look at this particular period. I'm hoping will appeal to people who might not be playing chivalry and sorcery, who might be playing another historical or historically inspired games such as Handmaster we mentioned earlier, or perhaps Ars Magica, where its standard setting's the 13th century, but maybe you want to go a bit earlier, or something like GURPS, which has always had a very strong sort of realism.
Yeah, one of my earliest games, GURPS, I love it.
GURPS was my go-to game of the 90s.
It's the one thing I say. Every good gamer has at least one GURPS source book and one Palladium source book on their shelf.
I have many of both. I measure my GURPS source books by the yard.
I have everything for 4th edition and everything for... I wasn't a fan of 3rd edition because of the layout of the books. It just, aesthetically, I did not find it pleasing.
I'm the other way around. I got into it with the 3rd edition, and I loved the 3rd edition. I have the core books and a number of the supplements for 4th edition, but I've never actually used it in anger.
Used it in anger?
No. me going like about complex stuff. You know, I'm saying I'm waiting until they bring out a bestiary and a vehicle design system for
Right.
4th edition, because GURPS Vehicles is the most insane.
You can hours creating.
To make a bicycle.
I was going to say a cab. Have you, being a student of art as you are, the art of history, have you got a chance to see this?
Hold on, let me just switch back to this screen. So NASA's just messaged me saying, "How did it go?" And I'm trying to write back, "It's still going."
This guy won't shut up.
No, I saw this going on Kickstarter, and it looked very, very interesting, but I don't have a copy of it.
I don't know. It's from Osprey, and they do all of the historically accurate.
I'm a big Osprey fan.
Right, and this
Partly through Angus McBride, who did a load of Osprey illustrations.
Yeah.
And the MERP, the Middle Earth role-playing illustrations.
Yes.
I just realised I'm rubbing my hands in front of the webcam. That's not very good for viewers.
But I mean, your Elizabethan art, your Sir Arthur Pendragon. What a neat little game. I mean, if you get a chance, pick it up.
I've heard good things.
Now, historically accurate, it is not. But if you're a fan of Arthurian tales, if that's your cup of tea, and the European mythos of fairies and stuff, then you'll love it. I think they get it spot on.
I do, and I had to go on hiatus when I was working abroad with it, on my participation. I was playing in a really good Pendragon.
Oh yeah.
Pendragon, which is a great game, and part of my hero worship of Greg Stafford, really, down to that game. I think when it first came out, it took us all by surprise, and we weren't really sure how to use these traits and passions.
Oh yeah.
This is limiting the way that I play my character, but no, it absolutely frees up your role playing. I was playing a very, very cowardly lady, and probably the only time in a gaming table where I've broken down and sobbed my heart out. The Saxons are coming. Oh my God! Nobody does it.
Right.
And frees up your role playing.
Yeah. The one of my favorite pieces of art.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
That is gorgeous.
And I think I think the art would have still been stunning without the sword breaking, but it lends some poetry of violence, as I like to say, to show that the sword is breaking after he's cleft this guy in twain. So yeah, if you get a chance, man, this definitely he smoted him verily.
That did very well in the Ennies this year, I believe. Romance of the Prince.
Yes, it did. I do vote in the Ennies, and I do pay attention to it. I have become an anti-Gen Con guy, just because there's just so many people there. And I call myself a grognard, which I know you're familiar with the term.
Yep.
I am a grognard of gaming in that I don't want it to be in large crowds. I never have. And I think it comes from so many years of being a police officer. I just don't like people touching me. And just that.
I unusually, for a British person, I don't like waiting in queues.
Yeah. Right. And I'm grumpy. I am Mr. Mean. I am, I want it now and leave me alone. And I worked Gen Con many years, and I pimped for a lot of different companies, and I enjoyed it. I would not change it for the world. But now, virtual cons are the way to go. Or small local cons. Where there's.
I went to Gen Con UK about 20 years ago, the last one, when it was held at Manchester University, and I did enjoy that. It wasn't the crowds that I'm seeing from modern shots of Gen Con, but I must admit, as a British gamer who's never been to the US, Gen Con is up on my list of things that I would like to